Hey guys, Brent here, Liquid Freedom Brewing, and today we're going to do some bottling. So once you've made your beer, you got to drink it somehow. So there's a couple of different options that you have. So one is making your beer and immediately bottling it and bottle conditioning your beer. All right. What I like to do is actually keg my beer and then bottle my beer off the kegs. So I do this for a couple of reasons. So one is if you ever want to enter homebrew competition, you want to have good clean beer, good clear beer. I find my beer is a little bit better when I bottle it off the keg because the kegging process and sitting and everything helps to remove some of the fine sediment in that's in the beer. Even though I may do gelatin fining, Whirlfloc in the boil, all of those things, cold crash, I can still get oftentimes a clearer, cleaner beer off of the keg. One example here is my Kolsch. So this Kolsch is crystal clear and tastes amazing. Brewed it, fermented it, kegged it. Poured this glass just a little bit ago. Tastes fantastic. And what I'm going to do is actually bottle some of that. And today I'm bottling specifically for competition, but you can bottle for any reason. We'll go through all the equipment, some of the reasons that I have what I have, and then we'll actually do the bottling. All right, so as far as bottling beer goes, there's one key component, and that is, of course, the bottles. Now, your bottles don't have to be standard 12-ounce bottles like this. I often do 12-ounce bottles for just general purpose stuff. So competitions, or if I'm taking them to, say, kickball game with my coworkers, or just trying to spread a little bit of Christmas love. I might bottle up some of these, get a little 6-packs, give them out as gifts. But they're very convenient, very normal size. Everybody's accustomed to these. So of course, now that you have your bottles chosen, you've got your beer brewed, right? What else do I need to do in order to bottle this? Well, some of this stuff is optional and some of this stuff isn't. So first and foremost, you've got your bottles, you've got to have caps. So caps are fairly cheap. These are oxygen barrier caps from LD Carlson. You get at my local homebrew shop. No big deal, no muss, no fuss, and gets the job done. You can also get fancier caps. Those are just plain silver. I've got caps that have the American flag symbol on them, the logo from the brew shop, orange caps, things like that. So you can get creative with that if you want. You can even order custom caps off the internet for your own little brewery. So I can order Liquid Freedom Brewing caps if I wanted to, but I tend to go with the clear one or plain ones because if I do have to throw these into a competition, I need plain caps. You can't have distinguishable caps. So caps, very important. All right. Next is going to be a capper. So this is the old, two-handle style capper. Most of you, if you bought a homebrew kit, probably received one of these. That's where this one came from. So this capper is about 3 years old, 3.5 years old. Still does a fantastic job. You throw the cap on the bottle, or you put the cap in here with a little magnet, put it down, turn the levers, and it seals it, right? Great. I've got actually a couple of these at this point. I tend to always come back to this one. I don't know why, but it works well for me. Sanitization. So I've got 3 devices here for sanitizing things. So the first one is this guy. So this is for sanitizing my bottles. What's great about it and what I love about it is you push it on here, you push it down, the piston action actually shoots the sanitizer up into the bottle and then it rinses straight down. So what I like about that is that I don't have to dip them and roll them around in there. Keeps my hands out of the sanitizer. This sanitizer, I use a Star San, which is what most people use. There's some other options out there, but Star San is kind of the tried and true. It is bad for your skin. It's an acid-based sanitizer. It'll eat your skin up. So by doing it this way, I don't have to actually get into the sanitizer with my hands and it's all over bottles. You can wear gloves in that, but I don't like gloves, so this is a great option for me. I pump it 3 times and then it's clean, right? Now I also have a spray bottle. So the spray bottle I use for spraying ball locks and things like that. Spray bottle of sanitizer is always super handy. And then the last one is this, this growler full of sanitizer. So what the growler full of sanitizer is actually for, this is my beer gun. I actually store my beer gun in the sanitizer in between bottles. It's also a good way to just make sure that you're clean, right? So I've cleaned this beforehand, but it still needs to be sanitized. So I will actually use the growler as a beer gun holder, and it sanitizes as it goes. So that's great for me. And then the other thing that I use the sanitization for is the caps. So your caps need to be sanitized. So I just put the caps in this. So they're in the sanitizer. I start it off, pour them in there, and then as I need to cap a bottle, if I've already got it rinsed, great. If not, I rinse it, grab a cap, fill it with beer, go on. So works out really, really good for me, but that's why these 3 different options for sanitizer are here. All right, my bottle rack and my trays. So my bottle rack and my trays kind of go hand in hand. So I use two cookie sheets. They're lipped so that they can hold liquid. And the first one, I put my bottle rack in, so that as I sanitize my bottle, I sanitize it, it's clean, I put it in here, right? So that the bottle's upside down, there's nothing falling in here, no dust or anything else. And it helps to drain as much of the sanitizer out as possible. We know that we don't have to get every drop of sanitizer out of there, but the more I can get out, the better. So what I'll do with this is I'll take my spray bottle, spray this down so that I know it's sanitized, sanitize the bottle, put it in there. Sanitize another bottle, put it in there. And I can hold 24 bottles on here. This rack is actually part of a system for cleaning bottles, but all I use is this rack. I don't use their full system with the pump and everything. I find that this is a very good way for me to get my bottle sanitized, dry, and ready to go. The second tray is actually where I bottle my beer. So take the beer bottle out and use my beer gun and fill my bottle here. This way I can fill it all the way up till the foam comes out. It spills over the bottle, but it stays in the tray. Doesn't make a mess, keeps the wife happy. The other nice thing about that is I can bottle a few bottles, fill a few bottles. I can set them aside and I can set the caps on there. And if for some reason my carbonation was too high or something like that and it starts to boil over, it'll just come out in the tray. Again, it's clean. And then as I cap them, I usually cap them pretty quick right after I bottle them. I can leave them here and any of that beer that's on there kind of drips down and then it's in the tray. So it kind of keeps things clean. And now the beer gun. All right. So this is the second gen beer gun from Blickman. So Blickman Engineering. They made the original beer gun, didn't quite look like this. It was called a beer gun and everything, but it didn't quite have the same kind of plastic handle on it. It's very quick, very simple once you've got it all set up and once you know how to use it. You kind of have to find your sweet spot with your CO2 pressure going into both the keg so that it comes through. And then you're also, this line down here is actually CO2 coming in to purge the bottles off. So what I've actually done is I've got a two line manifold here. So I've got CO2 coming in, right? So the CO2 comes in here. Then I've got 2 lines coming out. This blue line goes to my beer, right? So it goes to the keg that I'm dispensing off of so that I can run it at a little bit lower pressure. I don't have to run it at 12 PSI, 10, 12 PSI that my Keezer's running at to dispense beer into a glass. I can run it at a lower pressure so that the beer is moving more smoothly and not releasing all that carbonation, right? I want to prevent carbonation release as much as I can while bottling. The other line, this clear line, actually goes to the beer gun right here, and this is for purging the bottles. So we all know that oxygen can damage beer, can cause off flavors, oxidation, everything else. So what we do with the beer gun here is when you go to bottle your beer, the first thing you do is pull this trigger here, and this is going to release CO2 into the bottle. So I'll release the bottle, push this button for 4, 5, 6 seconds, and I know now that I've got enough CO2 in there that it's pushed all the oxygen out. So now I can pull this trigger here and dispense the beer into the bottle. And I know that the beer is going to come up, it's going to push CO2 on top of it, so there should be no oxygen. So there should be no oxygen coming between the keg and here. If you did an oxygen-free transfer into the keg, then you have done everything you can to prevent oxygenation of your beer and therefore help ensure better flavor, better lasting beer. All right, so here we are at that sanitization process of the bottles. So I've already used my spray bottle. So I used my spray bottle, spray down this rack. That way that I know that the rack itself is clean. I've already done about a dozen bottles here. But basically what I'm doing is I'm taking the bottle, which has been rinsed, right? So the bottle's clean, just not sanitized. 3 pumps, right? And then I actually swirl it in here just to make sure that I'm sanitizing as much of this bottle as I can. And then I'm going to set it in the rack. So clean and good to go. This method has not failed me at all. And I believe one of the reasons is that I both sanitize the rack and then I sanitize the outside of that bottle as well that's coming in contact with the rack. So nothing's going to get on the beer. It's upside down, so if anything drips, it drips off. And then when I fill the bottle, I overfill the bottle just a little bit so that it pushes anything out and it runs away from the capping area. So that's that. So that's how I sanitize those bottles. There's just a couple more here. I want to have about 16 bottles on hand here, just in case. Okay, so there's my bottles. The other thing is going to be the caps. So I need at least 16 caps, which means I'm going to put at least 20 of them in here. Because if I happen to drop a cap while I'm going to put it on there, I'm just going to grab another one. A few more, just for good measure. And I'm just going to make sure that they're down in the sanitizer and they are getting wet. That way we know that they're taken care of. All right, so the bottles are sanitized, caps are in the sanitizer getting sanitized, ready to get the gun ready. So what I do is I set my gun up. Like I showed you before, I've got my 2-line manifold here. So I've got one of those that can go to the keg and one of them that can come to the beer gun. Make sure that the beer gun has air coming through, CO2. Beer line here, so I have a very long, I think 10-foot beer line that I put on here. I do replace this from time to time, just because, just like your beer lines on your kegs, you need to replace from time to time. I replace this one from time to time. It doesn't get nearly as much use, but I think it's still better in the end to just change out your lines every now and then, at least clean them on a regular basis. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the beer gun, dip it in here, right? And I am going to actually run sanitizer through this. So I've got this hooked up off to a keg on the side over here that just has sanitizer in it. It's got about a gallon of sanitizer or something like that in there. I'm going to pull my trigger and it's going to run this stuff through there. You probably will see that on the video that it's running through. And what I'm doing is basically filling this up. Now, I'm going to fill it up over here so that it runs out. I like having the entire thing full so that when I put this beer gun in there, it's completely covered in sanitizer, right? So it's totally full. When I pull it out, it's got some space in there, I will actually hit my purge button just a little bit in case some sanitizer is stuck up in there. It just pushes it out, so I'm not pushing sanitizer into my bottles. Okay, I did that over here. Once again, this is going to kind of clean up the mess. This is still going to drip a little bit on my table, but I'm not worried. This table I use for beer, so it's okay. So now that my beer gun has sanitizer run through it, it was clean already, but now it is sanitized. The beer line was clean, now it is sanitized. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hook up my keg of beer out of my Keezer to the beer gun. Okay, so now the beer gun is hooked to the keg of beer in the Keezer. So CO2 line's running up there, and the beer line is running in there as well. And I've got my regulator set to about 4 PSI, okay? Like I said before, I don't like filling the bottles at regular keg pressure, regular serving pressure. I run it a little bit lower. I've played around with different temperatures. If it's really, really cold in here, I might be able to push a little bit warmer, or I'm sorry, a little bit higher. If it's really warm, I might have to go down like 2 PSI. All depends on the exact scenario. But I know that 4 is a really good spot for me to start, and that's usually where I do start, regardless of what the temperature is, and I'll see what the beer is doing. You'll also see differences with beer that might be a little overcarbonated, undercarbonated, things like that. You'll want to do different things. But one of the keys here is you want to keep that CO2 in suspension so that when it gets into your bottle stays carbonated until somebody drinks it. I've got some bottles over here, some stouts, some porters that are old. They're a year or better old, but they still open and they still have a hiss and they still have carbonation in that beer. And those were bottled off of this setup. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to grab a bottle. All right. Set that bottle down here. And I'm going to go ahead and clean this beer gun out. You'll notice that the line looks nice and clear right now. And very quickly, it is no longer clear. You'll see this looks red. So this is my raspberry blonde. This is one of my more preferred beers, my wife's beer. Been very popular. Really popular with people that like wine and don't really like beer because it's got such a fruit flavor to it. So beer gun goes in the bottle. I tilt the bottle. I'm hitting the CO2 release here to purge the bottle out. All right. And now I've done that, I'm going to leave my bottle at an angle, and I'll explain that in a second. And now I'm going to pull that trigger. Okay. So the beer is filling up. There is some foam on that beer, and that's okay. Now I'm going to go up high, straight up. Foam comes out. As soon as I see beer come out, I'm going to pull my wand out. Now you'll see that the carbonation comes up, it foams up a little bit. That's perfectly normal, perfectly fine. I'm going to stick this back in there. I'm going to grab a cap, and I'm going to cap this. So, and there's our bottle. Okay. So, good bottle of beer, and there's a couple of pieces around it on why this is a good bottle of beer. So first, the reason that I pour and start with it on an angle is that the sooner that the tip of the beer gun is actually covered in beer, the less likely the CO2 is to come out and foam, right? If I just let it fly from up top, it's going to spray the beer, it's going to foam out, right? And I'm going to get a lot of foam. You'll notice I got some foam here. Some of this is still from the sanitizer, but I didn't get a lot of foam. Once it's fully covered, you can go straight up and fill it up. No harm, no foul. The other thing is I make sure that I leave this in the bottle all the way at the bottom until I see just that little bit of clear beer, not foam, clear beer come out. I know then that it's full. And when I pull this out, it's going to leave just the right amount of headspace in that bottle, right? So when you look at a commercial beer bottle, it's got a certain amount of headspace and it's very consistent. That's because they flow the same amount of beer in there every single time. Well, you can accomplish the same thing by using the wand as displacing space. And when a clear beer comes, you pull this out you've got that headspace, you cap it, you crimp it, and then you're good to go. So I'm going to set this bottle aside. I'm going to do another bottle. Okay. So we grab the bottle. All right. I'm going to purchase a little CO2 off of here. Put it in my bottle. Count to 4, maybe 5, 6. Don't skimp on this. Make sure the oxygen gets out of there. I'm at an angle and I'm going to pull the trigger. Again, there is some foam in here. I'm going to come up straight. Foam comes out. And this one is foaming up more than the other. So you'll notice here, now I've got a lot of foam coming over the top, not just that little bit. And I'm also going to end up with less headspace. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to reduce my carbonation or CO2 pressure a little bit. To release the excess pressure, I'm just going to hit my purge valve here. Right? And we're going to have this thing, got to hear it, at about 2.5. Okay. So I'm just going to set that bottle aside for a second. Grab another bottle. This hasn't touched anything, so it's still clean. I'm going to purge. Now that I have such a low pressure here, I'm going to purge a little bit longer, just to make sure I get enough CO2 in there to push everything else out. And then I'm going to pull the trigger, pour beer in there. So it might be hard to see, but now there's less foam. Okay. So the beer's coming out smoother because it's coming out a little bit slower. Rise up. And there's my clear beer. Come out. Now, the other thing you can do is when you pull this up, this one's not foaming all the way up. So I want to make sure that this is totally purged of oxygen. So I'm going to pull this trigger right here, and I'm just going to push a little bit of CO2 right there into the cap. All right. Grab my cap, my crimper, and there's good bottled beer number 2. So this can be done over and over and over again, obviously, as many bottles as you need. For my competition, I need at least 3 to turn in. So I'm going to turn in 3 bottles. I'm going to bottle a couple extra, and that way on the day of competition, I can taste what it tastes like to them. And then when I get the score sheets and things like that back, I can open another one and taste it while looking at the score sheets to see if some of the things that the judges commented about, I also taste. And again, I don't enter competitions to win medals or anything like that. I enter them to try and learn a little bit and get a little bit better at my home brewing. And I haven't done a lot of competitions at this point, but I've done a couple. And like I said, we're bottling for competition today. So I'm going to go through and bottle a few more of this raspberry blonde ale. And then I'm going to be bottling some Kolsch. So another thing that I find when bottling these beers is if I spend a lot of time in between bottles, I tend to get more foam. Okay? So typically what I'm going to do is I'm going to bottle them as quickly as I can. And it also results in less foaming. And that's basically what I'm trying to avoid. So you'll notice here I've got this bottle poured, got another bottle poured, got one pouring now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll do one more. And I am purging each one because when I start bottling faster, there's not as much foam. So the beer is not foaming up to push out any possible oxygen at the end. So I'm doing the little button just to push a little bit on top. All right. So there's 6 good bottles of the raspberry ale. This is that raspberry ale we're doing. that's there. All right, so I have gotten rid of my raspberry blonde ale, moved it out of the way. We're now ready to keg the Kolsch. So the first thing I did was move the beer lines, so the beer line and the CO2 line over to the Kolsch keg. So now this line here is filled with raspberry blonde, so I need to purge that off. So that, again, I come over to this bucket and I run it through, not a lot, but enough, right? I want to make sure that the beer in this line is Kolsch and not raspberry, right? I don't need any mixing of the beer. All right, so I've got enough caps, got the bottles. I'm planning to do 6 bottles, okay? So I don't really need all of these. So these are just extra in case, like before I had one that just got too foamy. I can set it aside, I've got another bottle ready to go, and I get to drink that one. So here we go, all right? So bottle, and I'm gonna do these ones quick. So you guys kind of see the process the way it normally goes. All right, there are 6 bottles of beer. Like I said, this is my Kolsch. So we can pour some out of here using the beer gun. Really proud of this beer. Looking forward to seeing how it does in the competition. We'll see. That's it. That's beer bottling. Beer bottling with a beer gun. Obviously, this isn't bottling and bottle conditioning. The bottling off a beer gun, off a keg. There's other options out there besides the beer gun. There's counter pressure fillers. There's full machines that you can buy. You don't have to do bottles. You can do cans. You can get a can sealer. There's even some cans out there now with a twist on cap. So you would just fill it and twist on the cap, and it's good until you twist off the cap. It's not really resealable, but it's sealable once. So you have some options with that. But this is the way that I do it. This is how I've been doing it for a few years now, and it's always worked out really well. If you got any questions, throw them in the comments. Give me a like, subscribe, please. Helps out the channel. And then hopefully we'll see you in the next one. Brad, Liquid Free Brewing. Cheers.